Bengali, and so being Bengali was a big thing. When I was growing up, we were, you could say, seasonal Muslims. You know, we prayed during Eid, we fasted during Ramadan. I went to Sunday school, but that was much more of a cultural thing more than it was an Islamic thing.
My parents came from Pakistan. I was born and raised in New Jersey. Growing up, you know, Islam was an important part of our lives. I went to Sunday school, I learned how to read Arabic, all the basics. I had a very strong group of friends growing up who were all Muslim, so we grew up together almost as siblings. This one particular friend, our parents go way back. They all came to the country around the same time, and so the immigrant experience, they got very close. It was very much like family.
I was born in Framingham, Massachusetts. My mom is Pakistani, she's from Karachi, and my dad is Indian from Bombay. Growing up, I think Islam and being Pakistani, Indian, that was a big part of how I defined myself. Culture and religion and sort of behaviors or expected behaviors, that all was sort of tied into my upbringing.
My friend's a little bit older than me. When I was born, she was like my big sister. I grew up with all her cousins, all her aunts, all her uncles, kind of like as if they were my own. He was relatively new to the country, and I didn't know him very well, but because he was always at these family functions and gatherings, he was somebody that I was made to think I should trust. I was 8. I didn't ever question that until he betrayed that trust.
In the beginning, it was random men that my dad was friends with. And so these men would, you know, tell my parents that they're taking me out for ice cream. But you know what? In reality, I never went out for ice cream. I was like about 12, 13. He was probably in his mid-20s. We would still see him at family functions. Everyone would always ask me, like, you know, what's wrong? I was very abrasive, I was very aggressive. My dad would say, hey, you know, you need to behave, but I didn't want to have anything to do with him or his family. I had to grow up really fast.
When I was in 10th grade, so I was 15, we went on a trip. I always went to this one fruit seller on the street. And he always ran the market with his father. And every time I'd go there, he would stare at me a little bit, and I wouldn't really notice that much. You know, it was just a couple days before I was supposed to leave and go back home. I went, and his father wasn't there with him. And he had like 4 or 5 friends that were also there. I was walking home. It was starting to get dark. I kind of looked behind me just to see what was happening, and I noticed that all 4 of them were following me. And so I kept walking. I kept walking a little faster, turned around, and then they were closer. So I started running, and I could hear them running after me, and they were yelling. And then I felt one of their hands, someone's hands, closed around my mouth and my ears and my eyes, and suddenly I couldn't see anything. And they dragged me to some other side street, and my whole body just froze. And I guess from there it's kind of obvious what happened.
First time I met someone who was a victim of a sexual assault was probably when I was, I want to say, around 23 years old.
The notion escapes us at times as to the importance and impact that we can have on the
She wanted to understand, you know, why would God let something like this happen? And I feel many of the responses that she was forced to digest that at times the Muslim community imposes upon others when, in my opinion, they don't really have a mechanism or understanding of how to deal with something, left her in a place very unsettled. You know, just put your trust in God. Have your faith in God. This is a test from God. And in her own words, you know, why is God testing a 5-year-old?
Every time I was in a situation with, like, let's say an old uncle, like a non-relative uncle, or even my cousin, it was always a feeling of disgust. It was always a feeling of secrecy and not understanding why I had to be secret about it, but for some reason it was like this innate feeling. All I know is the feelings that I had coming out of those situations, or sometimes I'll have flashbacks and I'll remember exactly what certain people did. But for the most part, that's just a part of my childhood that I wish to forget, wish to ignore.
And I just remember going back to the United States, and then after that I kind of just shut it out of my mind and didn't really think about it or register or even comprehend what had happened for another couple of years.
I didn't recognize it was sexual abuse until I was a lot older and I started reading things like novels, news articles. Once I recognized that, I was horrified, but I stayed silent, so no one knew anything about it for, you could say, like close to 16 years. It's very simple why I didn't talk out about it, because we don't talk about sex in a Muslim Desi household. And if we do, it's always don't have sex. It's always wait till you're married. Oh, this is haram.
For a long time, I did not understand what had happened to me. I tried to rationalize it by thinking maybe it's something that's supposed to happen or it happened to everybody else. And it wasn't until I was in middle school that I learned about sexual abuse in health class. That's when I realized that that's what happened to me. So I went to the guidance counselor at my school. She pretended to care a little bit. She forced me to tell my mother, basically saying that if I didn't tell my mother, that she would. Beyond that, she gave me no guidance whatsoever. She just was very dismissive and just made me feel like as though, you know, I should just move on, get over it, move on. When I told my mom, she shut down pretty much. She was really heartbroken by it, you know, and felt very betrayed as well. But she never spoke to anybody else about it, so she didn't know that she was supposed to help me get through this. That was pretty much the start and the end of it at that point.
When I told my mother, the reaction that I got was not one that I anticipated, because she's usually very open-minded, a lot more progressive than any, you know, Desi Muslim mother that I know. But her response was, it was very familiar in that it was one of any typical brown Muslim mother. She was understanding, but also confused and also just very unaware of how to interact and how to carry that conversation. She told me, you know, well, at least you weren't raped.